What is a wounded healer? I believe that nearly all healers are wounded, and it's just a matter of degree as to how wounded we are. I think that unless you were born into a conscious family or parent, then you would have to become enlightened to overcome woundedness, and very few people are enlightened. And so in the process, it's important to examine our relationship to being a healer. And there is an impulse within a lot of people to minimize the suffering. But there's also a dark side to the desire to be a healer, which is avoiding one's own pain. And I have found within myself that it can be a way, focusing on other people's issues and so forth, can be a way to get away from a kind of lingering existential dread or, a lingering feeling of tension or discomfort within me. And so to be present with that, then that is what is important so that I can be more effective when I am in a healer role, and make sure that I'm not compulsive about a need to heal. I found after my last relationship ended, there was a part of me that wanted to find someone else that I could focus on healing, because I was often in that healer-helper role. And so because of that familiarity with that way of getting away from my own feelings, I felt like I need to get another fix on some level. And I've experienced a lot of loss since I started paying attention to my spiritual path about 13 years ago. And a lot of this loss was loss that I chose. Some of it was loss that just happened, due to death or ending of relationships. But I've gone from being a very extroverted, very, socially interconnected person with, dozens of people on my phone list to a very individual type experience. And a lot of the relationships that I decided to end were with people who were healers, people that I knew through going to graduate school for counseling and so forth. A lot of them, I think that a lot of people drawn to being a counselor or any kind of healer are drawn towards figuring themselves out. So we all had that in common. We all felt like, okay, this is a way that we can better understand ourselves, is to learn how to help other people. And it's very powerful to explore that with other people, and it creates strong bonds. But I found that many of these people, I think that my life has afforded me a lot of spaciousness, and so that has given me a lot of presence with myself and allowed me to go deep and realize that I had to deal with my family issues and so forth, and set boundaries and end relationships when needed. And some of these other friends of mine in the past, one of them I think had unresolved issues related to his being molested, and ended up acquaintance raping a friend and a girlfriend of his friend, and it was sad to see that. And others, and him included, a lot of people I knew abused alcohol, and a lot of people didn't deal with their family of origin issues, and a lot of people just couldn't go as deep as I wanted to go in the exploration of the self. They weren't comfortable with that. And I also found a lot of people didn't reciprocate. I would reach out and then would not hear back. But in my wounded healer role, if anyone reached out to me, I'd get back to them right away. And I was thinking about this experience in which I was living in Santa Cruz really shortly after my spiritual awakening back in '97 or so. And I went to see a presentation on Gestalt therapy by a therapist who, I think he was trying to drum up more business, and so he put on a little presentation. and about 8 or so people showed up. I was there early, and I tried connecting with him because my experience before that was that the Gestalt therapists I met were very contactful, but I didn't feel presence with him. I didn't feel contact, and he seemed to be in his head quite a bit. But I was still in this role of seeing people as a professional, and I had worked as a therapist for a year at that point, and then got into the internet after that. But I was still, he was older than me, and so I was still in that kind of trance that comes with seeing somebody as a professional. So I went along and observed, but during his presentation I just didn't feel much. I was not inspired and didn't want to follow up. But during that presentation, one of the persons who had attended there was a young woman who made a statement about how it doesn't really matter where you're at as long as you know where you're at. And I thought, that's really profound. And I think she was not wearing shoes, she was very, had a kind of organic kind of vibe or whatever. And I wanted to talk to her afterwards, but she was walking out with a guy who could have been a boyfriend. I didn't want to cross that boundary, so I just appreciated her, and I thought she was conveying more wisdom with that statement, something that had stayed with me more than the professional had. And being in a professional role as any kind of healer can be something that we hide behind. It's something, I know that for myself a lot in the past I would say, I don't have to look at myself. I wouldn't say this out loud, but I didn't feel I had to look at myself and my pain and my grief and my issues as much as other people because of my role. It was something that I could protect myself with and stay focusing on other people. But of course, anyone who takes on that role of helping others, because it is needed in any form that it takes, paid or unpaid or whatever, has a special responsibility to really feel their stuff and go into it. And I have found that the core issue that is most difficult to go into is the relationships with the people that we grew up with, the relationships with the people from our past. And do they continue to serve us? Are there things that we walk around in our interactions that still hurt, but because of fear of loss, we don't deal with them, because we don't want to lose these connections due to nostalgia or some kind of, sociobiological connection or whatever it is. And I have found, as I mentioned earlier, I've experienced a lot of loss. And so, if these are all people around me, as they disappear, different kind of, don't want to leave just my middle finger up, it's just too crass and inappropriate for the moment. As these relationships fall apart, and I'm left here with myself, then it is in that aloneness that I find I am enough. And that is so powerful, to know that we are enough. We are programmed on a genetic level to seek the tribe, to seek the herd, the H-E-R-D, and find comfort in that. But that is just an old kind of programming that comes from safety in numbers against attack from a competing tribe or animals or whatever, was a threat in our biological past from many accumulated lives, generations on the bodily level. But now we are enough, and yes, we're still social, but we're not in need in the way that we were on a survival level. And so many people who are transitioning from being unconscious in the matrix towards being who they really are, that requires a certain kind of letting go, a recognition of not fitting in, a recognition of not wanting to play along. And when you find yourself as an individual and you feel that it is enough, then I believe that opens the door to contact that is more congruent, that is not just a cyclical replication of past relationships or family dynamics, but a true soul connection, a true feeling of soul, being in a soul group, or having that kind of spiritual family or spiritual tribe. But getting there can sometimes take a lot of letting go.